Good evening. It is Raven and KaliGoddess, and we are here with the beautiful soul, Sofia. And before we before we start the show, I do need to announce that we do not consent to any trolls or any haters. That is your energy to transmute, not ours. And to introduce you to the beautiful Sofia, let me play her little trailer before we begin. This week, Raven and KaliGoddess welcome Sofea Ra, Earth Guide, Quantum Alchemist, Sofia, Womb Oracle, Angelic Channel, and A Priestess of the Rose. She is the founder of Yogini Arcana and a mystery school channeled, overseen, and guided by the higher realms, including various ascended masters and councils holding space for the expansion of the sacred feminine, and offers advanced galactic light work, diverse curriculum, activations, ceremonies, initiations for those walking the path of mystery. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sophia, for being on our show. We're so happy that you're here. I think Kali has the first question for you.
Yeah, I'm curious. What was your family life like growing up? Was there religion, spirituality, or both? Can you elaborate? What was that like for you?
So we had, in a way, both. I grew up in a Hindu family. So while in a social context, it's considered more of a religion, a lot of what is practiced is grounded into spirituality. So we have like Ayurveda and like yoga practices, and all of that is sort of combined. So growing up, that's what I was constantly surrounded by. A lot of holistic practices and consciousness practices since I was growing up. So my mom used to drag me around to yoga classes when I was 8. So I did that for a couple of years until the teacher's business got shut down. So I didn't do it after that. But that was pretty much my life. My grandmother and my mother would always get me to learn about all the natural properties of plants. So our home was pretty much surrounded by it, and animals in my house. So it was more on the spiritual side, where even while I was young, I was already learning about consciousness. I was already doing meditations. I think my mom was more of the gateway for me that sort of brought me in to introduce all these things to me at a young age. And she was already a practitioner herself at the time. So that was more, my environment.
Beautiful. Well, you and Kali have a lot of things in common.
Yeah.
Where are you at right now? Are you in another country?
Yeah, I'm residing in Malaysia. I'm literally in the middle of the city at this point. Hopefully I get to move out soon. It's starting to get really dense now. But yeah, I've been in the middle of the city in Malaysia.
And it's early morning there?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Kali?
Thanks for waking up early to be here. Yeah. Okay.
Thank God I
Did you want me
earlier?
Oh. So we're all aura practitioners, and you also have training doing the Akashic readings. What brought you to begin that work?
I've always been sort of drawn to the more esoteric side of things, I guess. I just didn't quite have the right modality. So I would practice a lot. I had a lot of natural gifts that would develop over time since I was a child, but I didn't really have a way to maybe keep them balanced, or certain technical teachings in my toolbox. So eventually, I didn't really get into this until a couple of years ago. It's quite funny how it worked, because I had that thing, and I asked my guides how to remove it. So that's how they slowly started guiding me to Aurora's page, and they guided me to like other practitioners and whatnot. And that's how I started getting to know of this modality, and I wanted to practice, but I couldn't until I took it out. So, but since I was a kid, I've always been very drawn to mediumship and entity removals more so. Um, I've had a lot of strange and very out there psychic experiences, but I've never quite been on the afraid side. It's more like I was very intrigued by a lot of these things. So once I found myself, a lot of my natural abilities started to grow. I think I was also putting myself in a little bit of a tricky situation, because it's like I was a very clear channel by the time I was 10, but I was having trouble with, again, like I didn't know how to shield myself, for example. So I would just be absorbing a lot of stuff and then making things worse for myself. So it's things like that where I was trying to learn, and I was learning through other modalities, but it just never, something about it just never clicked for me. It was very, I tried Reiki, but then the second I went into the first level attunement, my higher self pulled me out of it because something, apparently the symbols were infringed on at the time. So thankfully she pulled me out, but it felt like, yeah, like every time I tried to go to maybe a common modality that is more observed in the 3D and lower 4D planes, it wasn't really sitting right with me.
Was that the Yushushiki Reiki, or was that the Ra Reiki?
Oh no,
That
that's the Usui one.
Ishui.
Mm-hmm. Because I don't think even the practitioners know how to maybe at least protect themselves and cleanse themselves. So it was like, yeah, I guess in a way for me, it was my guide's way of showing me like this, like we get why you're drawn to this, but this probably isn't going to work for you because of all of these reasons, maybe because of the infringements. It's like to show me that a lot of the modalities and spiritually practiced, while beneficial, oftentimes they're distorted,
Well, and
unfortunately.
I can understand that because, being a Yushushiki master myself, we were not taught at that time when I was learning that to shield ourselves. Although I had the background of my grandmother teaching me to shield and everything, so I did shield. But I can totally understand what you're saying about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very natural for us to be
Yeah, for
drawn to
sure.
the modalities because it's already a natural gift for us from who knows how long ago. We're remembering, right? But the way it's unfortunately presented to us now, it's not exactly in the best form for us to be able to make use of it.
I totally agree with you. Um, did you have any specific spiritual awakening? I know that your mom taught you, and I know that my grandmother taught me, but I still had some spiritual awakenings. Can you remember maybe a specific spiritual awakening? I know we go through them all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say I did have an initial spiritual awakening by the time I was maybe 19, 18 or 19, sometime around that point. Because I don't know why a lot of people don't end up sharing things like this, because they think it's only a spiritual awakening when you experience like the most rock bottom stuff, but later on in life. But I've always felt myself at least somewhat conscious since I was a kid. So I've always been aware. I've always had, like, when I remember memories from the day of my birth. I've had memories from 2-3 years old when I would interact with certain energies. So I've always been somewhat aware, but I did have like sort of that initial awakening when I was about maybe 19. When I can't remember, I think it was more like little things that prompted to it. I was experiencing grief that I had from years prior to that, and I think at some point, I was still in college at the time. I was starting my college year, my first year, and I think I was it was all such a blank, but I think I was struggling with a lot of things, and by that point, it became sort of a culmination of everything. So I remember feeling that like my grief hit me out of nowhere. I remember being on the floor. I was a sobbing mess. But I think around that point, I remember feeling like I instantly, when that happened, I remember seeing this sort of like a literal veil was being lifted off. I remember seeing it as physically as I'm seeing you now. Where I could see like sort of this curtain in front of me was like invisible, and then once that spiritual awakening started happening, I literally saw like cracks. It was so bizarre, and then once that got lifted off, suddenly everything around me, my physical reality, was just colorful. Like all the colors suddenly just was at like a different end of the spectrum of saturation. Everything was just bright, and I could see like specks of like reflections from a glass, like it was sort of floating around. So I've had like things like that. But even as a child, I feel like I remember at one point when I was maybe 3 or 4, I would see visions of myself in an energy form. Um, for whatever reason, when I saw that form of energy, I knew it was me. So I saw this mass of energy sort of shaped in a human sense. Like I could see the head and the shoulders. It was like this golden white light, and hovering over earth as like a protection, like as if it was protecting the earth. So I would always see visions like that over and over again when I was 3-4 years old. And I remember asking myself, like, I think I came here to do something, but I can't remember. And I would ask myself that over and over and over again. Like I feel, that feeling when you like, you get up, you walk to the kitchen to grab something, then you walk in and suddenly it's just like your mind's blank. You came here to like sort of pick something up, and it's like, why did I get in here? It was that sort of nagging feeling that was always there. Like I came here to do something, but I can't remember. I kept trying to squint my brain, like trying to figure it out, but I couldn't. And I remember at one point I went to my mom, like, why am I here? What is this place? And my mom would have to reassure me, like, you're fine. But I remember just feeling so confused, like, I don't know these people. I don't know who they are. Why are they here? So I would constantly feel that way when I was a child. Eventually I sort of grew out of it a little bit, but yeah, that was sort of how I guess I was always sort of, I've always had that awareness, and having a family that was already spiritually in tune was very helpful to start developing that at the time.
Nice. Yeah. I go into the kitchen often and forget what I've gone there for. More lately that I've gotten older.
Yeah.
Colin?
So if we have any comments or questions from the audience, we can go ahead and have them chime in. It's so nice to have you all here, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Yeah, so you did speak about having natural abilities and talents, and some of the things you've decided to develop. I just was wondering if you want to draw from your experience and give any advice to someone who is now starting out on their own like journey of awakening.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a couple of things that I find that always worked for me. One thing was recognizing where I was being drawn to. So as a child, I would be drawn to certain studies, modalities, or even cultures sometimes, because that's how you remember past lives, right? Like out of nowhere, you'll feel connected to a certain country or a certain culture of people, and you have no idea why. So it's more so that start leaning onto those feelings. So if you're feeling drawn to write, chances are you've done it before. There's a very high chance you've already developed that gift and perfected it. So it's more so where I don't think there's a lot at this point in time that any of us needs to actively pursue. It's more so of just remembering what we've already done. So anything that we're drawn to, chances are we're already natural at it. We've already done it many times. And I was also very drawn to many different things that I wanted to do. So because of that, sometimes I would feel a little overwhelmed because I didn't know which one to choose. Um, but whichever one you decide to go with, it's like it's not going to really lead you away from anything. It's only going to develop further. So to just trust that, and also let certain things come naturally. Allow certain things to sort of develop on its own, because I find that sometimes if you pursue something too hard, you're really blocking your development for it. So for example, I used to do a lot of art when I was a child, and I would never feel good at it, but I liked doing it at least. But for a long time, I just stopped for because of life, whatever the reason was. I stopped doing it, and I only picked it up a couple of years ago back. And when I started it again, I felt like, oh my god, I've just let all like so many years go. I didn't know if I would um, sort of regain the ability to do it again. And I still wasn't very good, like in a more technical manner. Like I wasn't doing very well, so I would still study it. But I find that a lot of the time when I would study to sort of just pick up on certain areas for me to look into, because that's the only thing. Like it's more like, okay, maybe I should observe color this way, maybe I should observe composition this way, but that's pretty much it. I won't stress out too much about it. In fact, instead what I would do, I would just take the time to just sit with myself, and I'll just start doing it. So instead of freaking out about like if I'm getting this technically correct or not, I would allow myself to just observe and do it as is. And what I find is that compared to the art where I'm focusing on every little tidbit, the art that I'm not focusing on those is a lot more. It looks a lot better. Basically, it's done a lot well because I'm able to zone in and observe in a much deeper way rather than trying to tick off some checklist. So in that sense, I would always say maybe learn what you can, look into the aspects that you need to focus on, but the chances are just the fact that you're drawn to a specific thing means that you're already a master at it. You've already done it many times. So also you need to, because of that, it's important to give it space to come through you rather than trying to force um, force all of those whatever that you're observing, for example.
So I think
Yeah,
that's
so
really
I hear you saying that it's good to follow your intuition and follow your heart, but as well as just like being in a nice flowing state with the things that you're interested in, right? I love that. It's really beautiful. And I think we would all agree, since we are all artists here, and it's great advice.
Yeah, allow the creativity to flow instead of forcing it to come through.
Yeah.
Yes. So your spirit name or your name is Sofea Ra. That is such a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about it and what it means to you?
For me, it sort of came in out of nowhere last year. So I've had my legal name for a long time. I still have it, obviously. But when the name Sofia Ra came in, it was more so that, for one thing, I was being guided to do an initiation. So my guides came in at the time. Once I started hearing the name, I was being led to an initiation, but it was also a point in time where I had completely closed my timeline, my 3D timeline at that point. So it was like whoever I was for the 20 something years before that name came in, that entire timeline was just closed by that point. And because it was closed, it was like, okay, now we're getting to that next step where my spirit name now comes in. And I was guided to receive an initiation. It was I'm trying to think of how to word this, but it was kind of a self-initiation process where my guides were guiding me. I didn't know how it was going to happen, what I was supposed to do. Again, while I was, I usually just go by my guidance and experiences. I don't really study too much in terms of, what's out there or what you should do and how it works and things like that. So when the name came in, the first thing I saw was a beach. Like, I just saw a body of water, and I was like, okay, so I guess I'm going to the beach. And then, right on time, I was talking to someone a mentor of mine at the time, and she randomly suggested this person who could just give me options on where to go. But she ended up being someone that took me there instead, which was very funny because I don't drive, and the place was quite far away, and I was wondering how to get there. And before I even asked anything, she just sort of offered. So it was more like the situation where my guides were showing me, we're arranging this for you, it's happening. And like, without question, she was this random stranger, to me at least, and she was like, yeah, I can just drive you back and forth. We can do this, take a whole day. I'm going to take a day off from work and we'll do this. And I was like, okay, that's great. And she brought
Isn't
me
it
there.
nice how that happens?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I've had so many stories like that where out of nowhere I would not have any idea what's about to happen, but I would have some sense. Like, they're telling me this is what's gonna happen, but I just wouldn't know how. And then things would just make itself known somehow.
It would happen.
It's very fun. So we went to this beach in the morning, and I was told that it was a beach where I was going to meet my dragon. Um, and that dragon was also a being that was coming in that week as my name popped in. So I assumed he was going to assist me. And so that morning I met my dragon, but somehow I felt like that was not the place where I was supposed to do the initiation. And we had hiked like 30 minutes to get to this beach at that point. And I was like, no, this isn't the place. This is just the place where I'm meeting my dragon. And we met him. It was very nice. And for whatever reason, we just left for a while and just walked around until drove around until we came to this just massive. I couldn't quite describe how it looked like, but if the second we walked to this other beach, it was just water, like fully encased in water, the entire land. I've never seen anything like that before in that part of the city. And I was like, I think this is it. And we came back a couple of hours later when the tide was higher. And the second I got into the water, I felt light language started coming in. I felt grandmother Anna, and then I felt my name. They literally showed me get in the water and say your name 3 times. And when I did that, I literally felt energy starting to pour in. The water felt very different. I felt like something was happening with the waters. I can't quite describe it, but yeah, that's how my name started coming in. And I remember just looking up at the sky and saying, "This is Mintaka." Like something about the sky and the codes that were coming in felt like Mintaka. So it was a very special day. It was a very special remembrance for me. And also the fact that it basically showed me that, you know, that old life was done. For me, it was like, you did it. You're done. We don't have to do that anymore. We're good. We're moving on now. So yeah, it was a very special time for me.
Nice. It's kind of like what you call a shaman's death is when you leave that old life behind and you renew into a new life. That's
Yeah.
really beautiful. And
Yeah.
your name is beautiful too. It just fits you.
You know what? I actually had a lot of doubts. Even when my guidance came in, I was like, really? That doesn't. Like, I was trying out a couple other names. I was like, no, this is yours.
It really fits you. It really does.
So beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Does the raw part have a significance?
You know what? I didn't know at the time. I wasn't very familiar with Ra or any of those teachings. It was just there. It came with the name, so I just
I'm
sort of
having
took
technical
it on in that way.
difficulties. Sorry to everyone.
You can keep going. I'm listening to you.
Okay. All right. So I didn't really think much about it. I just sort of heard the name along with Sofia, and then it was later on that I realized what connection I had with it, and the fact that a lot of the ascended masters and maybe the beings that I was connecting with were also part of the collective. It just sort of made sense. Like I wasn't one to just like think too much about these things, to be honest. Like I heard it, it makes sense to me, something about it feels right, and like we're just gonna go with that.
So are you connected to the Ra Collective?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you actually mentioned that. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So, being connected to the Ra Collective, do you do meditations on that, or how does that work for you?
No,
How do
not
you
so
connect?
much. I don't, again, like I don't necessarily think too much of it. I sort of go with whatever comes to me, guidance wise. If I feel drawn to maybe connect with the collective, I haven't felt that yet, but I have connected with other beings that are part of that collective, part of the Rock Collective. So it's sort of like in many ways they've always been present. It's just that I don't go actively doing anything to connect with these energies necessarily. They've always sort of been there, and I connect with them in that way. If that makes sense.
So, probably what I meant to ask earlier is, are you connected with any of the laws of one material?
Mm-hmm. I have this thing about like how I was saying about Reiki earlier, where I don't put myself into or pursue any resources that are earthbound. So a lot of what I learn and experience are either coming from my own guidance, my own experiences and observations, or if I really need to study something on a technical level to, like how, okay, like I need to learn to shield myself, for example, I need to learn how to use certain things a certain way, things like that. In those cases, my guides would just send me to the right people, the right books. Like I buy a lot of books, but they're mostly fiction. That's where I enjoy them at. But if they suddenly showed me a book where it's more of a non-fiction, it's something that you're supposed to sit and study, then I know it's serious. When they showed me a specific book like that, then they're like, okay, there's something in here for you. You need to study this kind of thing. So similarly, anything that I need to learn that way in a more tangible sense, it's always guided to go to the right resources, because I don't necessarily rely on, because chances are, like most things, everything is distorted. Like, like it's not going to be like a few thousand years ago where we may be able to access the original work very easily. And anything that is, any resources that are out here now, chances are it's purposely manufactured because it's distorted, so that people go on studying the narratives that they want. So I don't really lean into anything here in that way. But I mean, it's not so, it doesn't take a lot to just have a connection to something, right? So when I'm thinking about, if someone asks me what does the law of one represents, for me it's a very simple thing. It's like there's consciousness in everything, and you're connected to a single consciousness that is all that is. It's a unifying concept. It's a very simple thing. And the thing is, if you don't need to study it to necessarily understand it in that way to sort of feel what it means, So for me, it's more of, again, that unless I need to study something technically, my guides will give me the right resources. But most of the time, it's just an innate, just knowingness.
Right.
Like, yes, of course, everything is connected. Of course, everyone should be united, because everyone is a fractal of consciousness that exists throughout time. So it doesn't take a lot to come into just those simple understandings.
Right.
Yeah.
Kali was having some difficulties. Welcome back, Kali. We were discussing the collective consciousness, the laws of one material, that sort of thing. And I guess maybe you'll view the video to see the answer on that one. But welcome back.
That's great. It seems like you're very connected.
Yes, and I like that.
Thanks.
I like
change browsers.
There you go. Did that work? Did that work?
Yeah.
Good.
It's
So I like the way
something I've been interested in as well. I was attracted to those books, and so I thought I would ask. But no. Yeah.
I like the way that you put things.
Yeah, I got the tail end of it.
I'm really enjoying the two of you.
But I was going to say, like, Sofea Ra, you're so very connected. Like, I love to hear about how you're guided.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess that depends. Unless it's really... How am I guided? Let's see. I'm very sensitive to maybe my... I'm very sensitive to mostly my cognizant abilities. So a lot of the times it's knowing. A lot of the times I sense it physically. So that's where most of my gifts come in. But how am I guided? Let's see. I talk to my guides pretty much every day. So I have conversations with them as clearly as I'm having with you guys now. I love this technical stuff.
This is why I was like, we should just really have fun tonight, because it's going to be funny.
Okay. Let's see. Where was I?
Whose turn is it to speak? Also, are there any comments from the audience? We love to interact with you.
yeah, but I've had instances where, unless it's super urgent, when it's like very, very urgent, my guides actually step in and get me out of certain situations. So, like the Reiki thing, right when the attunement started, my higher self was like, nope, turn it off. And I immediately did that. And it was one of those things where if I'm talking to my guides, usually I'm having a discussion back and forth. But in instances like that, where their energy would pretty much overpower me and cut me off when I need to. So I've had maybe a couple of instances like that, especially when I was a teenager. I was very infringed at that point. I was very depressed. I was feeling very suicidal. And I mean, now looking back, I can tell how much entities were probably in me at that point. And my soul pretty much almost left me. So I had a very small fractal of my soul left in me at that point. And I remember my higher self had to step in because I had veered so off course at that point that any further, I wouldn't have been able to make it back. And I remember the moment my higher self stepped in. And again, I didn't know these terms or anything. I was aware enough to feel the senses because I was already psychically aware. I was already experiencing so many stuff and I was very open to it. So, but I remember the moment my higher self came in, again, I didn't know who it was, or at the time, I didn't know the terms, but I just felt this massive energy just suddenly drop into me. And like I was saying earlier, where the energy sort of overpowers and cuts me off without me even being able to think twice about it. It was one of those moments where the higher self energy just sort of came in and made the decision for me. And so it was like this. So there's been a couple of moments like that where it's been so critical that they had to intervene. But thankfully not so much anymore. A lot of the times now it's just a back and forth discussion. They communicate with me again as tangibly as I'm talking to you guys now. If I'm calling, I would sense it first. Usually I would sense who's coming in, or sometimes when I'm trying to understand something, I would just ask my guides, and then I'll feel I'll just ask out loud, and I'll feel a specific being, one of my guides come in, and I'll just continue talking to them. I get a lot of sensory experiences. So when they come in, immediately I would feel chills. When I'm making a breakthrough, I would feel chills, and they would agree with me in that way. Sometimes I recently started hearing a lot more this past couple of years, where it's a lot more quicker. Their communication's a lot more quicker. Like if I'm asking you a question and you're being able to reply immediately, I would feel that without delay. So if I'm asking something, I would hear it. I would hear an answer instantly. So right now at this point it's grown a lot, so I'm communicating with them in a more direct manner. A lot of the times I do automatic writing, so I ask a lot of questions in the shower, and then once I'm out, I would just start writing, and then the answers will start flowing through. So yeah, that's most of the time that's how I'm communicating with them. It's a lot more. It's grown a lot more easier now, where I don't have to doubt so much of what I'm experiencing.
I think automatic writing is a really super good way of being able to experience or being able to get the messages that you need to get either from your higher self or from your team, your guides. Do you have a special archangel?
And would we
or
call that channeling?
I don't know. I was asking a question.
Just go ahead. I won't ask any more questions. You enjoy it.
For me, I'm just watching here the two of you go in layer after layer because of the delay.
It's Kali's internet. It's so bad right now. Oh, I guess, would you call that channeling?
Yeah, it's bad.
Yes. A lot of the time, sometimes I would just channel directly where I'm speaking. They come in and speak through as well.
So would that be channeling as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite god or goddess or archangel that you like to work with?
There's a few. A lot of the times they come in because they come in for different purposes and different times. So most of the time, if like instantly, I would either work with just for anything. I would either work with Michael or Metatron, two of them. Ones that I work with generally, just anything at all, I would just ask them if I need their help or anything like that. But there are other guides that come in for specific purposes. Like right now, I have Goddess Isis that's been coming in this for this past maybe couple of months, because we're working on something to develop something for later on. And she's more of the teacher, where she's helping me sort of heal a lot of the divine feminine side of things. And she's teaching me a lot of energy work right now about doing certain things, technical things. And this so there are some guides that are more consistent because of, again, like the work that we're doing. So I have like with Isis, along with Isis, there are a couple of other beings that also, like, sometimes I would have Yeshua come in, or sometimes it would be um yeah, I think most of the time it's Isis, Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, and Metatron. So I work with them predominantly again on a specific project. So it's not like every time they're coming in because we're developing a specific thing, we're working on a specific thing. And so so they sort of take turns on this where right now, before this, Yeshua was coming in first, and then once I was done working with him for a bit, and then now Isis, and then next I'm feeling either Metatron or Mary Magdalene coming. So we're working in layers in that way, and that's because we're working on a specific project. But for more general sense, I'm usually just calling up Michael or Metatron. I have specific guides that come in during specific times, just out of nowhere. I remember this one time where, like, I connect with other ascended masters and angels as well, but sometimes, like, I think a few months ago, I was having a lot of, I was going through a heart activation, so a heart awakening, and I wasn't sure how to do it. So I was very confused, and I was feeling a lot of physical reactions, and I was very like a lot of inner child stuff was coming up, and my heart, there was a lot of grief coming up. So, and I wasn't sure how to sort of settle myself, and I instantly felt Mother Mary come in, and she was teaching me a specific breathing technique. She literally showed me, okay, so this is how you do it here, and do it here, do it like this, and things like that. And then that was it. She came in, she gave some information, and then I just practiced it. And while the heart awakening process happened, I just kept practicing that again and again to release myself. So there would be times like this where specifically they come in for little things like that. Or I would have like in the beginning of my spiritual awakening, I had Melchizedek come in. I had no idea who he was at the time. The initial time of my spiritual awakening was more like a guessing game, where I would just hear a word and I was like, okay, so that's your name. Like for Michael, when I first I had no biblical context, so I didn't know all of the other studies outside of what I grew up with. So when I remember first when Michael's energy came in, I felt an angelic energy, and I was like, and I just heard the name Michael. I was like, okay, so your name is Michael. That's how I got to know. And then later on, I would do research, and I was like, okay, so it's an angel, it's an archangel Michael, so he's this, and then like that's how it sort of develops. And same thing where I remember. It was sort of a dream astral travel situation where I got in, and then I saw this man with a long beard, white beard, long hair, and his presence was very powerful. Like I felt slightly intimidated, but I felt very familiar with him as well. And immediately I just heard the name Melchizedek. Like I could not have just concocted up a name that complicated. You know, like my mind would have just created something simple. But for whatever reason, I heard the name Melchizedek. I was like, I don't know who this is, but I guess it's Melchizedek. And then once I got it, I would study about that. I was like, okay, he's a high priest. He's it's basically the right hand of God, and Archangel Michael assists him and things like so. Like it's sort of little things that where I would start developing, and they would come in at specific time. I've only had Melchizedek come in like once or twice during like pivotal timeline shifts or when pivotal work is being done. You would just pop into oversee and then that's it, nothing else. So it really varies on who I work with, but generally I'd say Michael and Metatron are the ones that I just call on. My guides are the ones I call on the most, my personal guides, and maybe my dragon guardian. So these are sort of the core people that I call on a more day-to-day basis, but then there are these other additional beings that come in for specific reasons.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so cool the way you do that too. Kali, did you have a question that you would like to ask? We might as well, just
Well, my question is like, why did you choose to start a business in spiritual healing arts?
I mean, I was sort of pushed into it in a way. I didn't choose that for myself. I was actually studying film. I was doing film production in college. I was doing my degree. And I kind of dropped out halfway when the guidance came in, and I just went with it. But even up until that point, like I said, because growing up, I was already growing up spiritually. I was already interested in many things, and it felt like a natural progression. I was already practicing witchcraft technically at that point. I was doing a lot of that. So it was already part of my practice. And once the guidance came into like, it happened a bit funny, but my life started going wrong. And suddenly I just felt like I need to drop out of school, which I wouldn't have done because I only had 1 year of degree left. I could have just done that. But instead I just dropped out and I ended up doing a different job. And then that one was also sort of where my guides were like, this isn't the space for you. And they pulled me out by giving me a panic attack. So I ended up literally, I was on the floor having a panic attack, and I called and I just texted my boss, like, I quit out of nowhere. And that's how they indicated to me. And this was actually a few days before the initial lockdowns happened. So for me, it was a way where my guides literally pulled me out of a situation where I could have gotten trapped in very easily. And then after that, slowly, they start. I was doing a lot of shadow work by that point, and they slowly started directing me to, maybe there was a yoga studio nearby, so I started working there. And then I got connected to my mentor, who would later on then encourage me to commit and dedicate myself deeper into my spiritual path more. And yeah, that's sort of how it went. Like, they would just, it was all my guys just moving some chess pieces for me, just like, okay, go here, you'll meet this person, and then this would happen and this would happen, then you can get here. So it was more of that rather than me thinking, you know what, I want to open a business and do some healing. Like, it was not even in my mind at that point.
We have a question from Leah, and she wants to know, is it possible for one to have felt an awakening at a young age, but not having support and resources, missed it, more specifically, repressed it with guilt?
I mean, it is possible. I don't think it's that out of the ordinary either. But I also think that however things play out, it's gonna play out. For me, like I said, it's because I was so aware early on, but I also noticed now, looking back, now knowing what I know and learning about all this, looking back, I can see how actively I was being prevented to get on my path. So there was a lot of things that were happening, which is why I veered into a different trajectory, and my higher self had to step in at that point, because I was constantly being stalked. Constant interferences were coming in to stop me from getting on my path, especially knowing how fast I was developing spiritually at such a young age. It was pretty obvious that I can, again, instead trying to remember, like, I came here to do something, but I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to go roll with the punches and see where it takes me. But hey, interferences keep coming up to stop me from getting there, to the point where my higher self had to step in and take me out. And the thing is, I can look at it in a way where I've always been conscious, and I may have had spiritual awakenings even back then, but I remember only the one that really brought me out of it when I was 19. So it didn't really matter to me at that point whether or not I had a spiritual awakening. The fact is, now where I am is doing what it needs to. It's that old timeline is completely out of my life. I don't need to deal with it anymore. So it's not, I don't necessarily see it as like is it necessary to know like, did you or did you not have a spiritual awakening? The very fact that you're now studying the things that you are, learning about the things that you are, and spiritually evolving on its own shows that you've already developed spiritually. Your consciousness is already developing. It's not necessary to know all these like initial things that may or may not have happened. It doesn't matter.
Well, I think everything happens in its own time.
Yeah.
And it may have been repressed for a reason. I don't necessarily think that you may have missed it. I just think that, like Sofia said, you're looking for, you're looking into different modalities and such. So it's with you.
Yeah. Like, the very reason you're interested in growing spiritually shows that you're already where you need to be. You're already doing this. It's like you're doing the work that at least 90% of the planet is completely unaware of.
Right.
So that's already a very big thing. The very fact that you're even here questioning it is already like, it means that your consciousness is already developing. You don't need to worry about all of that.
Exactly. What a beautiful answer. Thank you, Sofia. Kali, would you like to ask another question?
Is this a delay? What's happening?
It might be the delay. Kali, can you hear us?
And it happens like uniquely, just as we are all unique. Yes.
Yes. Kali, would you like to ask another question?
Yeah, I guess my question is, we're all laughing because of the terrible timing that I'm having with my satellite internet. But yeah, my question is, like, what if you wanted to have a spiritual business, but you felt really shy? Like, you have to put yourself out there. Do you have any advice for going through that kind of shyness or some wounding around that?
I mean, I grew up shy, so I get that. For me, the thing was, I actually came to realize that I wasn't necessarily shy. It was more that my environment wasn't quite where I felt safe enough to open up to. So I think that's where it comes down to. So even if you want to open any kind of business, you need to feel more assured with yourself, first of all, to do it regardless of what you think the outside world is showing you. for one thing. And I also think it's important to create for yourself. This is more of something that I had to learn more recently, where I felt this, especially I feel like in terms of just spiritual businesses, I feel like sometimes a lot of people fall into this trap of like, if you're a light worker, you need to be of service to the collective, everything to the collective, for the collective, you need to do this, you need to do that. And like, until recently, I literally said out loud, I remember talking to my guides, and like, because I felt so blocked when every time I want to work and I want to put out something, I would feel so blocked. But then when I'm with myself, it would just flow in so easily. Like, it's like sitting in front of a blank canvas, and I have all of this energy, and I know I feel creatively energized, and I feel passionate about it, but then nothing's coming out because my aim was to create something that would be of service to the collective. So I wasn't doing it for me. If I was creating it out of simply enjoying what I want to create and what I do, it would have come in a lot more strongly, a lot more clearly, and the guidance would just keep coming. And in that way, what happens is your being of service to the collective becomes a very fulfilling byproduct, rather than you creating and sharing something in with the intention of like, oh, I need to help the collective. There's also like this weird underlying thing that happens when people feel like I need to they feel it because it's coming out of obligation, like, okay, so this is my sole purpose as a soul, I came here, this is what I'm supposed to do. So it's all like, I have to do this because of this and this, and that's a underlying obligation. And sometimes I feel like the ego can disguise it in a way where it makes you think that you're being of service, but really you feel a need to be a savior. You feel like, "Oh, I need to help people because people need me." People don't actually need us in that way. We just need to, our only thing is to just be living example of our choices. I don't think people are not helpless. They're not victims. They have just as much of the freedom of choice as we actually do. At the end of the day, as souls, they have their own contracts to deal with, and how that plays out, it's up to them. We don't actually need to control any of it. We don't need to save anyone. That's not our job. We just have to be living examples of our choices. So I feel like once you take that pressure off, where you feel like you need to feel obligated to be of service, whatever you create and whatever you share, being of service simply becomes a fulfilling byproduct, rather than you having to force it out. I remember just recently I told my guys, like, I don't give a shit about the collective. It was a very big realization that I come to, because again, it's that pressure of, as a light worker, people say you need to do this because you came here to do lift up humanity and blah blah blah. And then I really just had to be real with myself. I said, no, I don't give a shit about the collective. They're all capable people. I simply want to okay, there we go. I simply want to create what I want to create, and if people resonate with it, if people feel healed by it, and they get to connect deeper with themselves, that's just the most fulfilling outcome I could get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you're absolutely correct. It's not about us helping anybody, it's more about us being a representation of ourselves, of an awakened being. You're exactly right. So Sam Blue in the audience says, sorry, I missed a lot. What are your callings and what do you work with?
I didn't get that question. What does that mean?
I guess she's trying to figure out what your gifts are, maybe. And I know I know Sam. She works with her guides, and she's trying to figure out what you work with. So I guess you work with your guides.
I do work with my guides. I I love doing a lot of quantum healing work. So aside from Aura and Ra and Akashic, my guides would sometimes bring in modalities. They're very temporary at times, where it's like the collective would need this at this point in time. So I would get to do that maybe for 3 months, and then that's it. And then maybe later on, if they brought in something else, I would do that. So I've had like, I guess, my own sort of modalities that would come in, where my guides would teach me how to do it. Certain ascended masters, like I have a modality that Yeshua and Mary Magdalene came in, so they would hold space for those type of healings to take place. So I actually enjoy a lot of quantum healing work. Energy work is actually one of my favorites. Other than that, I do a lot of art. I read cards. I don't know, like I dabble a lot. So I do. I have a lot of divination tools that I like to work with. I write. I channel light language. I don't know. There's so many things. I can't really specify one. Anything that comes in the moment where I feel drawn to, I'm doing it.
Very nice. So that kind of explains it. I think that's what she meant by that.
Okay.
Kali, do you have another question that you would like to ask?
Yeah, I think that, let's end this show with telling us a little bit about what you offer, so any services or anything, any ways to get in touch with you if we're interested in working with you in the future. How can we do that?
Okay. You can reach me on my Instagram directly, because all my links will be listed there. It'll be easier, which is Sofea.Ra. So SOFEA.RA. Or the links are Kali's putting there, or you can reach there as well. Right now I'm more focused on developing an artwork series, so my focus is more there, but my one-on-ones are open. I'm certified for Aura and Ra and Galactic Akashic reading, and I have a couple of about 3 of my own sessions as well, where there's light language healing, and what else? The one that I told you guys about with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, it's that's another alchemy healing that I have. So there's quite a few there, so you guys can go check it out from there. I'm also in the midst of creating content on YouTube, so it's more so that I'm only now sort of picking up a lot of things again, like, because earlier, like I said, I needed to get that pressure off first. So it was more of a recent breakthrough, and now that that pressure is off, a lot of downloads are coming in on what I want to create. So hopefully by the end of the year, I would have a lot already up.
Beautiful. I've seen some of your stuff on Instagram, and I absolutely loved it. I felt like it was very activating too. I think you're a very beautiful soul.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy that you joined us, and we're blessed that you've joined us. Kali, is there any final remarks that you would like to say?
I was just telling Kali yesterday.
Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And
what were you telling? What did you say, Sofia?
I was just saying.
Yes, we connected on that. I was also a shy kid.
Exactly, because she has a very similar social awkwardness that I have. So I really like that.
That's fine. I'm socially awkward.
It's been great to meet you. I feel blessed. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think it was pretty good, even with all the technical difficulties. And we'd like to say good night to our viewers.
For me, you see, the sun is just like blaring in.
That's right, because for you it is morning, for us it is evening. So anyway, to our viewers, good night. To Sofia, have a fabulous day, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We look forward to maybe seeing you again sometime, and maybe not having so many technical difficulties while we're at it. So anyway, good night, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone.